So in today's episode of What the Tech, we have one of our visual art teachers here with us today, Lee, to share about a resource that she's been using and has found success with during this time of remote and hybrid learning. So Lee, my first question to you is, what ed tech have you been using?
So it's I kind of use two different platforms, primarily one more than the other, but they both are related in how I use them sometimes. So the first one is EdPuzzle, and the second one is Quizzes. I use EdPuzzle. I started using it primarily as a resource to make sure that students were watching the videos that I was assigning them. EdPuzzle allows you to, within the platform, it allows you to assign the video, post on Google Classroom, but then you can also see how long the student spent on the video, if they completed the whole thing. It allows you to turn off skip function, so they can't skip through the video and just get to the end and watch the last 30 seconds. So it allows all this control, and then I can see if students watched the whole thing. And then it also allows you to ask questions throughout the video, so that cannot be skipped either. So that also creates the environment of a kid can't hit play, leave the room, let the video run. There are questions that can be asked throughout the video to make sure that they're paying attention.
When you say videos, you mean like from YouTube? You can just straight up embed them?
Yes. Yeah. So they have this huge archive on EdPuzzle. But I was actually, the more I was using it, the more I was finding, like, some videos on YouTube aren't on EdPuzzle. But all you actually have to do is install an extension to your Chrome browser. And then it creates this link right underneath any YouTube video that's public. It just has this little link that you edit within EdPuzzle. So even if a video cannot be found on EdPuzzle, as long as you can find it on YouTube, you can edit it within EdPuzzle and kind of make it your own. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the videos that you find already have other people who have embedded questions in it. So sometimes I'll find the video, find questions that somebody else has kind of plugged in there. I'll go through them really quickly, see if the questions fit with really what I'm looking for the students to learn. If it is, I don't really have to do much work in terms of prep. I can just kind of assign it, and then, it's good to go for the kids. Mm-hmm. So that I was initially just using it that way, that, there were some YouTube videos that I wanted the kids to watch. I didn't necessarily want to take class time. But then as we switched to distance learning, it became a much more reliable tool, especially because the videos that I had been using in class, I could no longer, in the middle of a lecture, I may be pausing to, let's watch this video, and now we're going to discuss it. I couldn't do that as frequently. So EdPuzzle became a tool that I was using a lot more to make sure that they were still getting the same content. They were still being delivered with the same information. They were just having to do it, before we had discussion in class, or, let's all take whatever the length of the video, take 5 minutes, watch the video, come back, and we'll talk about it. So it became something that I was using a lot more frequently in class.
Mm-hmm. And so would you continue to use, let's say, well, we are going back in a hybrid format next week. And so is EdPuzzle something you're going to continue to use? Like, I can see it being used like really well at home, and then they do kind of like a flipped learning model, right? They watch the video at home, answer their questions, and then when they come to school, they do discussion. So that works really seamlessly. But what about like when they're actually in school, in the classroom? Is EdPuzzle something that teachers would want to use when students are in person? What do you think?
It can be used in person, because again, it's creating accountability. So if it's something that, you know, you're not assigning for homework, but you want to give each student, you know, everyone's going to watch this video on their own and answer some questions about it. If like, you know, sometimes kids aren't engaging or as quick to respond in terms of, well, I watched this video and now I'm going to say my opinion. And you don't always know what kids are doing on their devices unless you're really kind of walking around and watching them. So it does create that level of accountability, that, you know, at least the student has watched the video, that they're answering questions. So they're engaged in what's being delivered. And then can further, you know, that can just further the discussion that, you know, the content has at least been absorbed, and that, well, if they're answering the questions correctly, they're at least understanding the content. I haven't actually ever used it in school. I mean, I've used it as like a homework tool, yeah. But I've never actually used it once we've been back in school, because primarily I show them the video and then there's discussion around it. So there's kind of less of the need for it being used within the school, and it's more of a really good resource for like homework, or yeah, a flipped classroom, which is what I ended up doing with my art history class. When we had switched to distance learning, I was right in the middle of teaching a unit on the different overviews of art history. So we were breaking down this, you know, wealth of information of art history into the different movements. So all the way from, you know, prehistoric through the Renaissance, through to pop art and contemporary art. And distance learning, I had been just having them in class, and I would do the lecture with them all in my classroom. But then when we went back into split schedules in person in school, I didn't want to take up the time to lecture them when they were in school, because again, it felt like I have them in person, I want to engage them differently. I want them to do some more hands-on stuff. So I didn't want to take away the 2 days that I had them, for one of the days being like, here, I'm going to throw stuff up on the screen and you listen to me talk for, you know, 30 minutes. And so I actually pre-recorded all of my lectures and then uploaded them to EdPuzzle.
Nice. So you can even
that,
put your own personal videos. It doesn't have to be YouTube. Okay.
Yeah. So I had uploaded all my videos to YouTube, and then I just, using that extension, put them into EdPuzzle. And I didn't plug in, I could have, but this is kind of where my second tech tool came in, was instead of plugging in questions along the way, I gave them the whole lecture. And then I created different quizzes through quizzes, which would then, they could take as many notes as they wanted. I let it be an open note kind of thing. But then they would watch the whole lecture and then go in and take that quiz. And it was a really good way to test, you know, were you actually listening while I was talking for 30 minutes, or did you just zone out? Yeah, so it was a good way to test their knowledge.
Very cool. And EdPuzzle integrates really simply with Google Classroom, right?
Yes, yeah, it's really intuitive. It's really straightforward. It allows you to, you know how sometimes with Google Classroom assignments, you can schedule them, so you can delay them you can do all of that in EdPuzzle as well. You can pick when you want the assignment to be released. You can pick when you want it to be due, and then you just post it to Google Classroom, and it's really, really seamless.
And are you able to like grade within EdPuzzle, or like what does it look like on the teacher side of things?
On the teacher side of things, I'll pull it up while I'm talking. That would probably, you know, be helpful. On the teacher side of things, if there are no questions, I mean, it looks the same whether there are questions or not. But if it's just the video, it'll show you the percentage that the student has. It breaks it down by the student's name. It shows you the percentage that they've watched. So if it's like 100%, the bar is going to be green. If it's less than, 80%, the bar will be a different color. And then if there are questions throughout the video, it breaks it down into a grade for you. So it's out of 100. And then it does all that work for you. The only kind of exception to that rule is if you're allowed, most of the questions are multiple choice, but you have the option to put in an open-ended question. Some of the videos that I've shown for art history are a little bit more about a student's reflection of things that have been in the video. And so it's not really a multiple choice option. And so you need that open-ended, which then just means you as the teacher can go in, read their response and click, yes, this is right. No, this is wrong. And so you have a little bit of freedom in terms of the grading for that too, with the open-ended response.
Okay, so I'm hearing some really cool things about EdPuzzle. Very little prep because there's an entire library of videos and questions embedded into them that have already been created for you that you can pull from. It integrates well with Google Classroom and it makes grading really easy. And you touched a little bit too about how you couple it with quizzes, which I know a lot of us are already familiar with, and quizzes has those same easy Google integration, already created library, no prep, and also really easy grading. But if there was like a reason that someone should really leverage this tool, what would you say to them? Why should they use EdPuzzle? Other than those three things, which are very convincing.
Why should they use EdPuzzle? That's a really good question. I think it creates, this, at least for what I've seen from the high schoolers, is that whether or not they're, big YouTubers, whether they use YouTube a lot or not, I think it's reaching them on a certain level of technology. I think the fact that it's connected directly to YouTube is something that I think a majority of them use. I have never understood it. The only reason I ever use YouTube is because I'm a teacher. And I've used it more the more I've taught, but I was never, I didn't grow up in the generation of YouTube. So I don't use it for anything other than, teaching.
Yeah.
But I think it reaches them on a certain level of like, look, there's this video on YouTube. You're not using this random kind of platform of, here's a documentary that connects to you in no way. You're using information that's easily accessible to them. And so, it's not just these like obscure, like I've used like PBS Digital Studios on YouTube. I've used that for art history, but I've also used, clips from The Daily Show or clips from like an SNL sketch in mass media. I try to pull in stuff that's culturally relevant to them and that they're gonna see that they may kind of come across on their own. This is especially easy in mass media because we're talking about things, we're talking about media. And so it's not hard to pull in, the culturally relevant stuff to them. And I feel like even things on other platforms are uploaded onto YouTube. You can find like TikTok compilations on YouTube and then use that. So it's reaching, that was the roundabout way of saying that to some degree, it's reaching them kind of in their own space of technology. And it's not a new piece of technology that they aren't familiar with. It's not complicated. You can have I would probably be one of the least techie people ever. If I can turn my computer on, great. And so it's me being able to reach them on a level that I might not otherwise be able to reach them, because I don't understand, like, you know, half of the stuff that they talk about when it comes to social media. I don't get it, but it makes that connection. And it's also just really easy. I've used different ed tech tools that have been really helpful, but they've taken me, you know, a little bit longer to work through and to figure out. And this was just kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah.
And so it just created, it was a really easy tool for the kids, but it was a really just intuitive, easy tool for me as well, as someone who, well, I want to find something that's quick and easy, and I don't want to have to spend, you know, an hour trying to figure out how this platform works. I just want to get it and get it done. And so, yeah, it was a pretty easy tool.
Cool. So it's relatable, which is super important with our students, especially with Gen Z. I feel like as much as you can make connections into their world, like, the better. And then also just the intuitive nature of it as well. I think those are both really good selling points of why EdPuzzle is an excellent tool to use. Now, all right, I have one more question for you. Are you using the free or the premium version of EdPuzzle?
I'm using the premium version.
Okay, and that's important to throw out there because there are some limits when you are using the free version. So just to keep that in mind. But EdPuzzle is very gracious and offers discounts to schools as well as free trials. So if you're really interested in seeing the difference between the free and the premium version, you can sign up for a free trial and to check it out as well to see if that's something you want to invest some money in. But yeah, anything else that you feel like we need to talk about EdPuzzle? Or have we covered all the
I think we covered everything, yeah.
Cool, all right. Thanks, Lee, for sharing about what success you found with EdPuzzle and just some encouragement to others to also give it a shot.